Thousands of Palestinians are making the long journey back to central and northern Gaza, which have been the hotspots of Israel's intense war, with a majority of the homes and buildings having been reduced to rubble. It's all part of the first phase of the ceasefire, which has seen Israeli troops pull back from the fighting. And aid trucks are making their way across Khan Yunis in Gaza's south. The much-needed aid comes after Israel severely restricted the flow of aid and food into the war-torn enclave, leading to what many experts have called a famine. Meanwhile, preparations are underway at the Riyadh military base in Israel for the expected return of Israeli hostages held by Hamas. As part of the ceasefire, Hamas has until Monday to return all Israeli hostages in exchange for some 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. Joining us now is Thomas Warrick, Senior Fellow with the Scowcroft Middle East Security Initiative Atlantic Council. Thank you very much for being here, sir. How important is Trump's presence in the Middle East next week, and what kind of impact do you think it will have?
Well, there's a major symbolic effect, obviously, and he wants to take a victory lap. So a speech in front of the Knesset is going to give him a platform to do that. But in many ways, the most important thing he will be doing is lending his weight to a meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh, which looks to be on Tuesday, that will discuss post-war Gaza. In order for this plan to work, you need to get countries to contribute serious numbers of troops. The United States has already sent what amounts to a Pathfinder unit to help coordinate logistics, 200 logistics experts and communications experts arriving in a base in Israel to oversee more humanitarian aid distribution. But what they really need are tens of thousands of peacekeepers, because that's what will be essential to provide security for the people of Gaza and for Israel, to make sure Hamas does not come back into power, as they're already trying to do. And that security presence is what will allow the Israeli army finally to leave Gaza.
There is a deadline of Monday for the hostages to be released. In terms of logistics, what is that going to look like? Will there be troops on the ground during this? What do we know?
Well, so the handover is going to be more subdued than the elaborate and humiliating ceremonies that Hamas staged for previous hostage releases. It's going to be done quietly through the Red Cross. The hostages will then be brought to Israeli hospitals for a checkup. Those who need medical treatment will undoubtedly stay there. And there will be buses, similarly, to take the released Palestinians either to Gaza or to the West Bank. So the logistics of this are not large, not major, but still considerable. And the total lack of trust between Israel and Hamas makes this for obviously a perilous moment until it actually does happen. Now,
we're hearing that much-needed aid is beginning to flow in to Gaza. But what is the situation right now?
Well, it's much better than it was in July and August. What had happened was, despite all these claims that there was going to be mass starvation in 2024 and early 2025, there wasn't. But when Israel cut off humanitarian aid flows in March, that's when problems started to arise, because they did not have an adequate plan in place to deal with the total aid cutoff. And so you did see cases of starvation in July and August. President Trump applied some pressure to Israel, and they allowed more trucks in. And so conditions have gotten somewhat better, but there is still an enormous amount of aid insecurity. And more particularly, this allows Hamas and criminal gangs to exploit what little food there is for their own benefit, rather than for the Gazan civilians for whom it was intended. So flood the zone with aid is every humanitarian aid group's mantra. And that's what should now start to happen, and we'll start to see the situation ease somewhat for the desperate civilians in Gaza.
All right, Thomas, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your time with us this morning.
You're welcome.
That is Thomas Warrick, Senior Fellow with the Scowcroft Middle East Security Initiative Atlantic Council.